Good morning. It's Monday, the 13th of September. It's a beautiful Monday morning coming to you live from the heart of the Great White North, Midtown Toronto, Ontario, Canada, reaching to all of our freedom fighters worldwide. We already have many listeners who already joined us prior to going live on additional channels here on Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook. But are simultaneously simulcasting on our brand new ability to go live on our Zeno FM radio app. So, welcome back to all of our radio app listeners who've been listening to our program overnight. And we are going to resume from yesterday's morning show. Good morning to Canada, although it's already afternoon in Ontario. It's still morning in more than half of Canada. Good morning to all our Manitoba Canadians, Alberta, Saskatchewan Canadians, which is still 11 a.m. or sorry, 10:25 a.m. in your area. Alberta, Saskatchewan, and our British Columbia brothers and sisters, freedom fighters. It's still very early in British Columbia at 9:25 a.m. I'm your host Joey Salvador. This is Freedom Fighter Radio. Welcome to everybody, and good evening to some freedom fighters from the other side of the world. We are going to start this program right now with our newly joined brethren from four other channels. So let's get this show started right now. It's just another ordinary Joe show. We're coming live to the rest of the planet. And good morning to more than half of Canada, to our Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, freedom fighters. And good afternoon to Ontario, Quebec, and the East Coast. And good evening to some of the fellow freedom fighters from across the world, on the other side of the world, who's been staying tuned all night on the Freedom Fighter radio app. So, congratulations to everybody. Today is the very first day we are simulcasting on all our usual channels, but today we have our radio app going live, folks. I've been talking about how we everybody needs to download the radio app because eventually we are going live on our radio app. In the past few weeks, we're only able to upload whatever file we create from a live session, and we download the live from our Facebook broadcasting, and then we upload it to our radio app. But now, starting today, folks, we are live on Zeno FM, our Freedom Fighter radio app. So, good morning to all. And I would like everybody to on the Facebook channels. Please, we are going to attempt right now. Give me a few seconds. We're going to attempt and see if we are already able to broadcast on our usual big channels that we were prevented to go there in the past. So I'm gonna try two channels that we had restrictions to go live to, and we'll see if it's gonna work today. In three, two, one. Oops, sorry. Okay, we still cannot broadcast on our 15,000 follower page, Freedom Fighter Radio Canada, and the other one, the People's Radio Canada. But it's just a matter of time. They will run out of reason to restrict these channels, and eventually we are going to be able to broadcast on those too. But good morning to all of our listeners and tuners from other channels. So we are right now broadcasting on five different channels, which includes our Rumble and which includes our Zeno FM radio app. So good morning to all. I don't have my timer with me for our segments, but I will use my desktop timer, I guess. But just a little recap what we were talking about yesterday, and I know Ontario listeners and Quebec listeners are probably thinking, we've been waiting for you at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. But folks, there are so many things as you know, one man production. I have to kind of take care of other things as well. And anyways, it's a little too early sometimes going live at 10 o'clock is a little too early for British Columbia listeners because they're just waking up at that time. But I'm still very happy that we can do this right now. We don't know if after the 20th, so we are 7 days before election, we don't know what's going to happen if we are going to have a tyrant back in the office in Ottawa, or we're going to have a change of guard. And none of the big party contenders, as we know on this radio show, none of them are anti-globalist contenders. All of them are traditional. We call them in Filipino vernacular. We call them chapo or traditional politicians. Let's go. I think somebody left a comment already. Hello, David. Good morning. Back in a minute. David said. Good morning, David. How are you? And I really appreciate all of our freedom fighters who's listening to the radio show from home. A lot of people are still working from home, so that's great. And that's the reason we do the radio style broadcasting, because we want you to be able to continue on with your life, even if you're working. It's good to, like in the old fashioned days, in the old days, people in the mechanic or in the barber or whatever, you could keep on working, but you listen to the radio. I remember when I was working in a distribution company where we pack and ship prescription drugs, prescription orders to drugstores, and we would have radio running. So I know that a lot of people prefer to listen to music on the radio, but whenever I was working in the factory, I would have the radio on, but I would have it on talk radio so that I can also sort of learn something while I'm working. So, I really am just thankful that even though we have been shadow banned and we've been restricted to go live on many of the channels that were already built, we are still able to do this, and we have an opportunity to rebuild something other than our Facebook channels, because building on Facebook is like I should have learned it. I'm going to keep the Facebook channels for the entertainment business purposes, but when it comes to freedom fighting, we know that Facebook is relentless with censoring and filtering our thoughts and our message according that has to align according to their own conviction. We're not allowed to have our own conviction on Facebook. So building on Facebook as a freedom fighter is like building a house on the sand. The rain will come, the wind will blow, and it will collapse that house. But a person who builds his house on a rock, the rain will come, the wind will blow, but it will stay standing still. So that's why we are now shifting our attention to rebuild all of our audience members in other platforms like Rumble. Yes, David, we are on Rumble live right now. OJ, is your primary platform Rumble? I will spread the message. Thank you, David. Yes, well, we're shifting. Our primary platform will be shifting now to Rumble. Let me check a Rumble right now. So it says, from my view, it says live status is live right now on Rumble. And good news, David. I don't know if you step out and just come back, just to kind of reiterate to all of our listeners. Although we are not able to go live on our 15,000 follower page, which is Freedom Fighter Radio Canada, It's been almost 2 weeks now that we can't go live on that one. But fret not, be happy, and always set our eyes on the prize, because today, for the very first time, David, we are able to simulcast while we are doing this right now, this particular live show right now, as we are broadcasting it on Rumble and a couple of Facebook accounts and YouTube. We are also simulcasting this right now on our radio app. So the QR codes, folks, that you can see on the bottom right corner of the screen is our QR code for our Zeno FM radio app. Scan the code, download the app. Um, and better yet, if you don't have a QR code scanner, uh, on the comment section of these Facebook, if you're listening to Facebook, and also on YouTube, let me see. I think on Rumble as well. Let me look at our Rumble feed right now. Yeah, exactly. On Rumble, I also put the links to our mailing list. And let me put that right now on our comment section. Please pass around the link for our mailing list so I can email everybody the link to download the radio app. Some people like to work with links instead of QR codes, but there you go, folks. Today is a new day. It's a happy day. It's a good day. Like I said, it's afternoon already in Ontario, but it's still morning in more than half of Canada. Good morning to the rest of Canada. Good afternoon to the eastern side of Canada, and good evening to our Asian brothers from across the Pacific and also across the Atlantic. What time is it in the UK right now? So in Australia and New Zealand is most likely the same time as Australia. Australia, it's the same time as the Philippines, but in the UK, let's see, UK time. Right now in the UK is 5:36 p.m. So good evening to our British brothers and sisters for are listening to our show. I saw the heat map last night that I left a playlist loop overnight while I'm sleeping. I allowed a playlist loop to keep on playing on our radio app, Zeno.fm radio app. And lo and behold, we have a lot of listeners in the United States and Ireland, actually, of all places. Ireland, Scotland, and the UK. We also have listeners in Hawaii and so many listeners in the United States. But let me look there right now on our heat map if our Canadian listeners have tuned in on a radio app. I'm hoping. Oh, I don't have the view right now. Okay, so I'm just so excited that we are simulcasting on a radio app. For a long time, that was um, the the barrier, the wall in my mind. I'm trying to solve that problem. How can we go live on a radio app? And because a lot of people would really, it's very easy for us to do the analytics and count our, even monitor our live broadcast, how many people are listening in, if everybody or most of our people of our listeners are listening through the radio app on Zeno FM, and Zeno FM doesn't have any um, censorship like the one we are receiving from Facebook. So we are going to maintain our Facebook, but we are going to shift our main attention from Facebook to Rumble and our Freedom Fighter radio app. I'm just so happy about that, folks. I can't tell you how happy. I can tell you enough how happy I am that we are simulcasting on the radio app. So everybody, please share the link. Um, I just shared on the comment section right now the mailing list, the link for the mailing list, so that I can mail to anybody who joined our mailing list. I can mail to you the link to a free download for the radio app, and you can listen to our radio app. It plays 24/7, by the way, folks. So even after we go off live and we sign off, um, as you know, I cannot keep on talking for 7 hours, or even, not even 4 hours, but some people can. Alex Jones can talk for 3, 4 hours. I can't do that. Maybe the most I can do is an hour and a half if it's monologue. But then the next project here really is to reintegrate our phone app so people can call in and have a conversation with me, all of our viewers, our traditional viewers. And it will just be a matter of time, folks. Then and people will be able to. We are going to be able to broadcast on Freedom Fighter Radio Canada, which grew to 15,000 listeners already on that page. We'll be able to broadcast there again. It's just a matter of time. But I'm happy, even if we're not there right now. The biggest gift today is a radio app, Freedom Fighter Radio app, hosted by Zeno.fm. Download the app today. So, folks, yesterday we're talking about the military industrial complex, right? So, we had some of our usual, very valuable resource on our comment section. I saw Howard just on my way out yesterday on the live show. Howard Kwan was with us. David was there. Who else was there yesterday? Yeah, Christopher Nelson was there. We had a lot of Canadians participating in yesterday's discussion, and we had a very, very fruitful one. We were talking about how these endless wars are actually banker wars, and w- I- every time I try to put together a radio show for all of us here, is I'm trying to kind of have different parts, components on a particular episode, and one of uh, the important component of a particular episode is at the end we have some sort of call of action. So okay, basically that component is okay, now that we know some of this information, so what's next, what can we do about it, right? And I'll be honest, that's the most difficult part of putting together an episode. And honestly, if I have my way, I'd really love every episode to be pre-planned, pre-produced properly with all of my components, and I have a template that I can follow, so that I fill in the blanks with all the research. But honestly, nowadays, because there are so many things going on, and we just started school days as well, um, and it's election season. In less than 7 days, there's going to be an election in Canada. There's just so many things going on, and I'm reintegrating Zeno app. So uh, I'm saying all that, folks, just to say that I'm going on the fly here from memory. There are so many information that I gathered that I didn't really document in, like a professor, probably have a what we call, my mom was actually a teacher, a kindergarten teacher, and I remember every time she was about to attend class, or not attend, or teach class, teachers I know, and her friends who are fellow teachers of her, they spend a lot of time in putting together what they call um, a lesson plan, right? And that is something, if I have a lot of time, I prefer to do it that way. Sort of like have a plan, a series of things to have a conversation about on Freedom Fighter Radio, because we have big voices in the freedom movement, but a lot of people are also kind of suspecting, why, even though we had big voices in the freedom movement, why do we find ourselves to be sort of like not progressing enough so that we can turn over the advances of the tyrants? I wouldn't blame everything to some of these big voices who leads the way. And I understand that a lot of our ordinary members in the movement, they're thinking maybe they're controlled up. um well, I have a lot of thoughts about that, because that's a difficult it's not a difficult thing to process in my mind. It's just a little difficult to put it into words, what I think about it. Difficult because, okay, the truth is we have to acknowledge that there are controlled ops, but at the same time, um, I don't know if we can. Mm, I think eventually we should, but at this time, I don't feel like we should be calling out leaders in the movement or in the community. I don't think it's just ripe yet, or we don't have enough evidence to be calling out people as controlled op just yet. I don't think we have enough evidence for that, right? The reason is, and I think it's, there's a sweet spot in perfect timing in calling out a controlled op if there is evidence that somebody is a controlled op. So here's the challenge: when you do it too early, right? What's happening in our community is that we are being divided. Instead of us having a cohesive effort and a united front to push against the tyrants, we are so divided within. There's a lot of infighting within the freedom movement because we start suspecting and smelling something about a certain leader, that they might be controlled of, they might be being in the pockets of the tyrants, and they're leading the flock in the wrong way. If we call it out too early and we're not sure and we make a mistake, we actually divided the movement. If we call it out too late, what's going to happen is they might have led big portions of our freedom community astray. But we need to call them out in that perfect time. I cannot describe to you what that perfect time is. The only way I can describe is that if it's too early, it divides our effort. If it's too late, then they have taken big chunk of our members out on a marathon somewhere on an unproductive effort, and putting their time and energy on something unproductive out there. It defeats the purpose. There will come a time that we need to call out someone if we have proof, and only until we have proof that someone is controlled up. Now, having said that, there are many telltale signs if a person is a controlled opposition leading many of our fellow freedom fighters astray. I don't know what to say about that, folks, because we have to save whatever we have in the community to keep them in the fight. But oh yeah, let me just honestly, I don't know what to say about that. But today, really, what I want to talk about is creating our own community, and in terms of like physical community in proximity with one another, because I think we come to a time in our fight now. We are in the season of our fight when I think we have to implement both strategy where we we have to keep going and be relentless on our offense, but we really need to also start building our defense. Just like any sports game, right? So a good defense, they say, is also a good offense. But we have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing offensively against the enemy because okay, so let me break that down, folks. Why is it important to stay offensive and go out in the protest and speak up and push back? The very reason that that is important, that we are relentless in pushing back and going offensive and running, with fires in our belly and pressing on, The reason that is important at this season, I believe, is because there's a lot of posturing from the tyrants, from the unlawful members of the government and the medical tyranny who's pushing against us. We can see through that many of them are posturing because they know, they're fully aware right now that this tyrants doesn't have legal leg to stand on many things that they want to roll out. For example, vaccine passports. It's very unreasonable for them at this time to be pressing on the vaccine passport because they don't have any constitutional, everything legally is against vaccine passport, the human right commissions. So let me just kind of simplify for our listeners, because I can only speak for Ontario because I live in Ontario, but I'm pretty sure whatever I'm talking about in Ontario has a similar counterpart wherever you live. Even if you don't live in Canada, our Australian brothers and sisters, our American brothers and sisters, and just quickly, I want to put a highlight on this comment from our brother David. I have friends in Australia. We'll share, Joseph. Thank you, David. If we can get back to our 15,000 follower Facebook page, the analytics told me there's actually about 20% of the followers on the 15,000 one. 20% are Australians. So thank you. I appreciate what you're doing and being a good resource person, albeit from the audience member on this show, David. I appreciate that. Let me just read a couple more comments from David. Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Open Society Foundation, George Soros, the Bill and Hillary Clinton Foundation. There's always a Bill somewhere, right? Bill Clinton, Bill Gates. Um, the Rockefeller were featured on the Follow the Money link I sent you, OJ. They are running the show. Oh, you sent it to me on David. Where did you send it to me? On Messenger? I'll check it out, brother. Is it on Messenger or email? I didn't seem to have seen it, but after the show, I'll definitely check it out. And a second comment from David, he was saying, sooner the people realize that the tyrants' strategy is to keep us divided, the sooner we can defeat them. Their game plan is divide and conquer. And you send it on Messenger. Yes. Let me highlight on the divide and conquer. And we have to acknowledge that it's quite impossible to have a unified mind. Um, okay, let me walk back a little bit, and I think I can explain it better this way. So this is what I learned, and it is a very good insight from my co-host, my Wednesday co-host, Richard Rupp, last Wednesday last week. The difference between the way we organize in the freedom movement. So most members of the freedom movement are conservative leaning or right leaning, because the left is socialism, communism. It's if you're leaning to the left, you're more collective, you're more communistic, you're more, you know uh, that kind of political spectrum. But if you're leaning on the right, then you're more leaning towards democracy. You're leaning more towards free society, free trade, free speech, and the rule of law, and the freedom of the individual. Right. So it's safe to say that most members of the freedom movement, I would say most of us, are leaning right. Although yes, we have to be careful that we cannot be extreme right, because extreme right, that's pretty much where Adolf Hitler ran on, is being on the extreme right. So I would say extreme of anything, and I don't think he's a real authentic right. Anyways, the Nazis are not really leaning right; they're extreme right. They're extremists. extremist. How do you pronounce that? Extremist, right? So here's the problem. On the other side, the woke community, those who are leaning left, the leftist, the so-called liberal, which is, they hijack that name. They're not really liberals. They are leaning left. The leftists, they are leaning towards more communistic kind of mentality. But for us in the freedom movement, because we uphold the rights and the freedom of the individual, we are sort of opposite with the collective mentality. It's true when people have a collectivist mentality, which means what does a collectivist, how does a collective mentality works? The individual must not think too much. The individual must be always ready to follow and be obedient and follow the crowd and support the quote unquote. I'm doing an air quotes with my fingers right now. I know you can't see me, but quote unquote air quotes, the greater good, right? So when you hear the greater good, the good of the society, the greater good, do what's the right thing to do for the greater good. These are virtue signaling buzzwords, right? It sounds good. It sounds amazing. It appeals to the emotion. But if we dig deeper, really, what is being said here? These are collectivist, Marxist rhetorics, honestly. So the BLM and the Antifas and those who are left leaning, those who are being paid by George Soros, those who believe on the leftist ideology, honestly, it's a lot easier for them to organize. That's the truth. We have to face it. That's the reason the military, they said, is not a democracy. Because if you're a member of the military, the first thing you need to learn, you need to be conditioned to. I remember my dad saying, because he fought in the Japanese War as well. But when he was drafted, he was telling us all the time, dinner time, wartime stories with my dad. He would always say, the commandant would say, obey first before you complain. If you're a member of the military, that is your behavior. You got to obey. Obey. It doesn't matter if you have a protest. You make your protest known. Yes, it will be jotted down. It will be written somewhere that you're protesting. You don't agree with the decision, but doesn't matter. You agree or disagree. You have to obey. You have to fall in line, and you have to carry out what you've been told to, and that's a collectivist idea, right? So basically, well, if you're in the military, I think in 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 a certain degree that is reasonable, and that needs to be the protocol, because they really need to move as a team. They need to look after each other. They are each other's defense. And if you're a member of the military, you don't have the same kinds of civil rights like a civilian. A civilian has more civil rights than a member of a military, right? In the collectivist Marxist side of the political spectrum, our brothers and sisters in the community who are leaning left, even as civilians, they would like to function like military. That's the reason when the anti-freedom, the opposite side of our movement, of our community, those who are on the anti-freedom movement community, they can organize so effectively, so quickly. They can mobilize and they move cohesively. The reason is because they have a collectivist mentality. So in a way, you can say in the science of warfare, or yeah, let's call it warfare. Countries that have a collectivist kind of culture can move with unity, and they can be effective that way. But that's exactly, um, if you love science fiction, that's some of the value system that we see from, let's say, an alien invasion, right? So I've been a sucker for science fiction ever since I was little. The only difference, and even now, I'm still a sucker for science fiction mini series, or TV series and movies. The only difference is, when I was a kid, I love watching science fiction as an entertainment, and I believe everything. And as an adult, and also as an awake adult, the difference is now I watch science fiction movie and I can dissect through what are based on reality, what are half truth, half lie, and what are propaganda, and what's in there just to fool people. What components of a science fiction movie that are deceiving. But lo and behold, also nowadays science fiction movies are also being tools for tyrants to kind of rub o- r- you know push to us their propaganda. And I think it's used in many for many reasons. One of the reasons is to kind of, well, deceive people that this is cool, whatever they're trying to roll out with transhumanism and all that. They're making it cool. There's one. Number two, there's also fear mongering, where there's gonna be, this is about to come out. You cannot resist. Resistance is futile, just like the Borg. Anyways, I'm kind of digressing here, but if you watch a science fiction movie and let's say the plot is about an alien invasion, the aliens usually are operating with what they call a hive mind. If these are reptilian aliens, right, in a science fiction movie plot, they move in a hive mind. They're so collective, they're so unified in their efforts. And we humans, because we are individuals, we are created individually in the image and likeness of God, and we protect our individuality, and we uphold individualism. And we need to kind of train ourselves how to behave in such a way that we we know how to cooperate with one another, so that we can move together in unison. So basically, we are individuals that function together. That's the kind of, as soldiers, that's how we are trained. That is sort of like low kind of bandwidth when it comes to united effort, as opposed to something like um, a reptilian society, or even if they're cyborgs and they have a hive mind. A hive mind is pretty much, what we and that's, and again, I'm opening a big I'm opening a big Pandora box here. There's so much to talk about. Well, as I'm just kind of, there's a lot of things to talk about. But the reason the biodigital convergence and the transhumanist agenda is so strong is because that's the way for the tyrants to really make people fall in line. Because as individuals, it's very hard for tyrants to control us because we have our own minds. But if biodigital convergence become mainstream and everybody is connected to a hive mind, or what we call a singularity, basically a database, and that's what the social credit score is. Ba- a social credit score is a punishment reward system to control people's behavior. You got it? The social credit score system is exactly the tool to get a society of individuals that have their own mind, a society of humans that was created in the image and likeness of God, with their own spirits, with their own souls, their own individuality, and their own brains and mind, so that they can think for themselves. The tyrants don't like that. Stalin don't like that. Marx don't like that. Uh, and Lenin, the Marxists, the Leninists, the communists, the tyrants don't like individuals exercising their own individuality and having their own minds. That is against their mentality. So the social credit score is exactly for the purpose of hijacking a community of individuals and make them fall in line and behave in such a way that the tyrants want them to behave. So it's a herding system where, you go to the left, you get punished. You go to the right, you get punished. You stay in the middle. This is your lane, and that's what social credit score is. So everybody will be compliant according to the programming of the tyrant. Social credit score is a behavioral modification tool for the entire society. And because the communists are collectivists, the greater good, the good for society. Every time you hear those buzzwords, folks, just keep in mind. I'm going to get a little break here before we continue on. Keep in mind when you hear buzzwords like the greater good, um, national interest, the interests, public health, right? It's a collective health, collective privacy. That's something we are going to talk about very soon. Collective privacy is very much an integrated concept to the biodigital convergence. When they chip every single one of us, then we have to behave according to the tyrant's wishes. So we walk in unity. So all of these examples, the reason I'm going down this rabbit hole is to say that there are problems in organizing the freedom movement, but they are good problems. The reason sometimes we are so disunited, we are so fragmented, one of the reason, and it's not the only reason, yes, there are a controlled op within us. We have to accept that, and we have to be aware that there will be controlled opposition. That has already been the tool of the tyrants throughout history. Every uprising, every tyranny, they must have a controlled op leader in the opposition so that they can control the opposition. So we have to just that's a given. That's a matter of fact. We have to know that it exists. We don't know who they are. We are suspecting certain individuals might be controlled op, right? But we gotta keep our spidey sense on all the time and see who they are. But we also have to be careful not to fragment our movement even further than necessary, because we're accusing many people as controlled op. Um, so I'm saying all this because we have to learn how to navigate through the fact that we are individuals. And that's the reason we are in the freedom movement. We are in the freedom movement because the Charters of Rights and Freedom, the Bill of Rights, and every right there is are inalienable God given rights. The reason we are freedom fighters, the reason we are defenders of our rights and freedom, is because we'd like to protect the freedom of the individual, the rights of the individual, your body, your choice, my body, my choice. I have my own mind, I have my own brain, I have my own decision. And I'm hoping that we have uh, I don't want to use the word collective because that's not really what we want to, but we have a like mind that we choose to sync with one another on our own volition. Like I choose to sync my mind or my thoughts and my belief system with Howard Kwan's, with David Carlson's, with Chris Sky, But it doesn't mean that I will agree on everything, every single thing that Chris Guy would say. It doesn't mean that I would have to agree on everything that Randy Hillier would say. I'm still an individual. There are many things that I agree with what they say, but there are some things that I cannot agree on, but that's all right. I can continue to disagree with them, but still call them as a brother in the fight and to continue to work with them, even though there are things that they say that I cannot agree on. There are things I cannot agree on with Max Bernier, what he was saying. And we just have to respect our individuality. But this is the card we're dealt with. This is the nature. They say that, remember that speech that so-called feminist Justin Trudeau, the feminist, the son of Castro, when he was giving that speech on a bunch of women, he says that he admires the basic dictatorship of China because, China, he was saying, moves very fast on things. That's true. In a way, it's true that when you live in a collectivist society, when you live in a hive mind society, when you don't have your individuality, yes, of course, they will move in unison. But us in the freedom movement, we are all individuals. So we have to navigate through the fact that because we are individuals, we are going to have disagreements. But I am hoping and I'm wishing that all of us, even though as individuals, would be respectful, would be also open minded and listen to the arguments and the reasoning of our brothers and sisters in the fight, and maybe allow them to change our mind if what they're saying and the reasoning is possibly a little bit more or maybe a lot more reasonable than our own personal belief system. So I'm just saying, folks, let us work with each other. But I kind of digress. My thoughts today that I want us to talk about is how do we organize both offense and defense? And I think that was important to talk about the nature of our community, the nature of our relationship with each other. We have to accept the fact that unity in our community will not be easy because we're all individuals and we respect each other's individuality. But I know that we can rise above that level and be intelligent enough to, even while we're exercising our individuality, we can actually tame our own preferences and our own how we tick, and what's the word that I'm looking for, our own temperaments, so that we can be in sync with one another. In a way, you can say that's collectivism, right? But a different kind. This kind is we all do it on our own volition because we know that we line up with each other. Folks, we'll take a short break. Don't go away. When we come back, we are going to pick up on our conversation. And thank you for all who are leaving your comments on the comment section. Please keep it going. And today, folks, I'm so happy that we are also live on Zeno.fm, our Freedom Fighter radio app. Please scan the QR code or get the link that I sent, that I left on the comment section. Click on the link, join our mailing list, and I will be able to send you by email the link to our radio app. Folks, don't go away. When we come back, we are going to continue on our conversation right here. I'm your host. This is Freedom Fighter Radio. I'm your host, Joey Salvador. Freedom Fighter Radio only here on The Ordinary Joe. I'm just going to get a glass of water, and I'll be back in less than 2 minutes.
Freedom Fighter Radio, what is up? Whoa! Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio and Joe. You're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right, always.
Make sure you listen to the Freedom Fighter Radio on The Ordinary Show.
I'm on Freedom Fighter Radio on The Ordinary Joe Show. That's quite a mouthful.
Yes.
Hey guys, this is Chris Sky. Listen to Freedom Fighter Radio. They're here today, back in the blue, and so am I. Freedom Fighter Radio. What is up? Whoa!
Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio and Joe. You're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right.
Welcome back, folks. Welcome back to the show. This is Freedom Fighter Radio. I'm your host, Joey Salvador. You're listening to Freedom Fighter Radio from the heart of the Great White North, the heart of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I'm your host. This is Joey Salvador, Freedom Fighter Radio, only here on The Ordinary Joe on a Monday morning. Well, it's afternoon in Ontario and Quebec and the East Coast, but it's still morning in a third of Canada. So we're welcoming Manitoba in the afternoon time zone, but it's still good morning to Saskatchewan and Alberta, and still good morning to British Columbia, brothers and sisters in the fight. Let us go back to our comment section so that we can highlight the members of the panel on our show. Our usual very valuable resource people: David Carlson, Howard Kwan. Let's shout out to those who left some reaction: Andy Martins, Holly Weisflock, Johnny Rotten, Robert Walton, John Jansen, Letitia Rabino. Who else do we have here? Holly Weisflock. Okay, Robert Walton. Folks, leave. I know that we are not able to tap into our 15,000 follower page, but we continue on. And let me just quickly take a peek. Oh, there's the beauty about the Zeno FM radio app. We can take a peek on a heat map. It's actually the world map, and it shows where are the places we are being listened to very hotly. Did I turn it off? Oh my goodness! I don't. Let me just give me a second, folks. It's here somewhere. And while I'm looking for it, let's just kind of encourage everybody to please join our mailing list. Scan the QR code, join our mailing list, and on the mailing list, I am going to start as well to print a weekly um, newsletter for everything that we talk about, sort of like a wrap. It's a wrap, kind of. What do you call it? Like a not a synopsis, but a summary. There you go. Sometimes I'm run out of vocabulary when I'm live with you folks. A summary of what happened throughout the week on a newsletter that we can pass around. We can send out to our fellow freedom fighters, folks. I think I closed my dashboard for the Zeno FM. I just have the what do I have? I have the mixer and the streamer status window to tell me that we're still connected, and it's been connected for a total of 18 hours, 49 minutes so far. We're intending to keep this a 24/7 radio show, and even when I'm not live, there are many just recent live shows and important episodes that play on a loop automatically on the Freedom Fighter Radio app. That's the beauty of the app, is that when I go off live, when we're live and we say when we end the live and we say, oh, it's a wrap, thank you folks, we'll see you again next time, and then we go off live, the playlist kicks in automatically with previous episodes. Apologies. um I turned it off. I turned it off to bring it back on. I have to go back there. It might take some time, and I don't want to leave you guys hanging. But let's go to our comment section so that this needs to be a conversation. I don't want to be monologuing all day. I actually don't have the kind of stamina to do a long monologue. I got excited for a burst of a moment and then my energy dies very, very quickly. But if we can integrate our phone app and people can phone in, then that will give me a little bit of break from talking too much. You know, folks, unless I'm on the radio show, my default is actually very little talk. I'm very quiet at home. I rarely talk at home when I'm here, unless my daughter. Oh, my daughter, she talks. I won't. I'm not even able to squeeze in a word from me when she talks. My little daughter, but she has a lot of stories, and I enjoyed listening to her stories. But when I'm talking to you guys on the radio show, I know that I gotta keep it up, or else you'll be listening to a quiet, dead air, and people don't like that. So let's go to our comment section. David was saying he has friends. I have friends in Australia. We'll share, Joseph. Thank you, David. I appreciate that. We do have a lot of Australian followers. 20% of our Freedom Fighter Radio Canada page, which was subscribed to about 15,000 times by people. According to the analytics on that page, 20% of that page are Australians. And I think a good 30% of the page are Americans, and the rest are Canadians. And we have some, Africans in there, and Australians, and some New Zealand Kiwis, I think it's what they call. Already read this one. I read these. Did I read this one? Nazism is not a right wing ideology. Thank you. I need this, David. I need this insight. Let me read it. For all our listeners, these are some of our regular viewers and listeners to the show who always help me out with very insightful thoughts that they share on the comment section on Facebook. So those who are listening on the Freedom Fighter Radio on Zeno.fm, you're not able to see this because we're simulcasting on other channels on Rumble and on Facebook and YouTube as well. YouTube is not very. Yeah, I'm not gonna continue. We are gonna create our own YouTube, but my experience with YouTube, they always take down whatever we publish on YouTube because they're tyrants too, right? So I don't know. I'm gonna make a decision if we're gonna keep on publishing on YouTube. Anyways, so David Carlson, folks who are listening on our radio app, this is a comment from David W. Carlson, one of our regular viewers, listeners to the show. He is saying Nazism is not a right wing ideology. It's time for us to turn down the music. And Hitler replaced the old left with the new left. Ah, Nazism or Hitlerism is to the left of liberalism, but to the right of socialism. I see. Okay, so see liberal fascism, the secret history of the American left from Mussolini to the politics of change by Jonah Goldberg. Man, some of our audience members need to be taking over the show. I'm telling you guys, you should be hosting this show, folks. You guys have way more knowledge and thoughts than you have more research. Like our friend Howard Kwan, who's always bringing a lot of very, very valuable insights on the show as well. Howard Kwan, one of our regular viewers and listeners to the show, this is his comments speaking to our radio app listeners. Howard Kwan was saying social credit system, like in China, is for complete government control, no freedom at all in big solid caps. Amen. I 100% agree. Social credit score is a behavioral modification tool. Well, it's not really it's not a suggestion for people to behave in such a way. It's a enforced behavioral modification tool, because unless you do it, it could lead to your death. What if you're not allowed to buy any food from the groceries, travel, and all that? That's social credit score system, and it's coming to North America. David Carlson was saying, news alert, Bonnie Henry in British Columbia is implementing COVID passports, a QR code for vax and partially unvaxxed. Ah, that's why I really think we need to have a conversation about defense as well. We talk about offense. We talk about our offense. We equip ourselves with knowledge. We have conversations on this radio show of different ideas, and we need not let up. We do need to continue to be putting together an offensive plan, how we forward our cause as members of the freedom movement. But simultaneously, I believe that we have to start crafting a defense as well. So, one of my thoughts, and I need everybody's. Did I finish the comment section before I get going though? Let me make sure that we're done with the comment section. Tracy Posuk was saying consensus. Yes, when the hive mind, right? Consensus. Howard Kwan was saying 100%, and Google is big pharma and MSM owner, who are owned by the likes of BlackRock and Vanguard, who are owned by even higher level elites. And David was agreeing with Howard. He was saying, Howard Kwan, you are correct, sir. So, thank you for continuing to tune in on the second segment of this morning show. Again, good morning to the a third more of Canada, and good afternoon to the rest of Canada. We need to craft a defense. And yesterday, before we end the show, I was talking about how many freedom fighters right now are expressing their thoughts on moving to another country if Canada fall. And I understand why people are thinking this way. There's a lot of talk about some of our freedom fighters getting ready to move to Mexico, for example. And 2 nights ago, I believe I remember on Kevin Johnson's show, there was a guest there who was enumerating some of the friendliest countries outside of Canada to Canadians. And these are some of the options if many of our freedom fighters decide that they want to bail and go there. Um, I think these are my thoughts. Not everybody will agree, but I welcome dissenting, and we welcome dissenting opinions, and that's why we are having a discourse here on the radio show. My thoughts in approaching our offense, I really think that our offensive should be a marathon as opposed to sprint, so that I think the reason we should approach this as a marathon is because one of the tyrants' strategy, in my observation, I might be wrong, but so far, in my observation right now, the tyrants are playing the waiting game. Sort of like the longer they they restrict us on going back to normal, our original normal, is they're hoping that they will break our spirits and then we will give in. Um, we can see forced vaccination in Australia now. Is it coming as quickly to North America, to Canada, United States? Is it coming to other European countries that quick? Um, the international community is watching what's going on in Australia, and I really think in Canada, the Canadian freedom fighters, as though we don't seem to be as numerous as what we see happening in London and in France. But I think because we witness all the growth of the freedom movement in those countries and how the numbers are expanding and the numbers are increasing, I really think that this is starting to motivate some of those who were not participating in the past, that those who are on the fence, I think they are going to start getting motivated and actually being outspoken and being more visible, and they will be starting to join us in our fight. Having said that, a lot of the leaders of our movement are all spent now, and some have already left the country. Some have already went to Mexico, and some are already not even able to take on the microphone anymore, like my friend Tyler Nicholson in Barrie, because the tyrants are just inundating them with legal fees and legal battles, that they are overwhelming our freedom fighting leaders, so that they'll be challenged financially, they'll be challenged um, with their movement. I don't know what happened to Chris Sky and Kellyanne. They were arrested a couple days ago in Hamilton. Anybody heard what happened? Are they released now? Kevin Johnston, I heard that he will have to report to a jail every weekend. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but that's what I heard, and he has to pay $20,000 fine. So I'm saying that this should be a marathon as opposed to sprint, or maybe we have to have both speeds. Some people who are eager to um, be guns blazing all the time, be loud and adamant in pushing back against the tyranny. I think, yeah, some people who are built to do that, I think we have to support them. Yes, if they want to be loud and boisterous and very speedy with um, their approach to pushing back against tyranny, if that's their method, everyone is different. If that's their method, some of our the members of our freedom movement could support them, and they should. Howard Kwan is just telling me that Kellyanne is out and Chris is still probably still being held. um the leaders would always be targets for the tyrants, because the tyrants are always thinking, you cut off the head, they don't have a leader, the people will scatter. And in a way, that's true, because the Bible said in scripture, without a vision, the people will perish. So sometimes people, the ordinary folks, are looking for a leader to follow and a visionary, right? Because lack of vision, with no vision, the people will perish. That's just nature. And the scripture, the biblical scripture, has um, has described that as human nature. But when the leaders are sort of like on a sprint and then they ran out of gas, and I talked to a lot of freedom fighters who were loud voices, and they have the megaphones, the bullhorns, and people followed them. I spoke to a number of them who are now just exhausted and tired, and they're spent. And almost they don't want to have anything to do anymore with the fight, and they have given up on the people, and they're starting to have this attitude that the people don't want to fight for themselves, we're not going to fight for them, right? I think part of the fight, part of the effort should be waking up people to stand on their own, uh, motivating people to stand up and fight with their own strength as well, and not just throw all of their support and their admiration to certain leaders, and then when those leaders fail, we scatter. That's a pyramid type of society. And I've been trying to speak on if it's possible, if we can just wake up our community and behave in such a way that we don't need a pyramid style, because we are individuals. And on the first segment we were talking about individualism and the challenge of being unified, because the other side are very collective in their thinking. So it's easy for them to mobilize, it's easy for them to move in a unified fashion, because the individual is not really respected in the collective society. The individual must just go along to get along. The individual must continue to behave for the greater good of the collective. So basically, in a collective society such as communism, socialism, and all that, those who are in the left side of this spectrum, they think they're very powerful because they act like a cabal. They act like, and that's how Justin Trudeau is actually running his government, right? In Trudeau's government, look at that. Observe and tell me, what can you observe? He has an inner circle in his caucus. It's pretty much Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau. That's it. His inner circle. And from time to time, he'll let the Minister of Family Affairs, what's his name, Ahmed Hussein, and Marco Mendocino, and some of you know wannabe tyrants alongside him. From time to time, he let them in his inner circle. Jerry Butts, maybe he's not officially there anymore, but he's still there in the spirit. But the rest of the caucus must behave according to the discipline that he has in place, or else you don't stay in the caucus and you get kicked out of the caucus. And unfortunately, our CPC party and many other parties are behaving in such fashion as well. So we have a culture in Canada of communism in the political, yeah, the political class. Much of the political class behave and obey the Marxist culture of collectivism. Howard Kwan was saying, teach them how to fish instead of bringing the fish to them all the time. Exactly. My thoughts is with our cooperation, even like sometimes I feel I'm alone here, but whenever I have Howard and David and many others who join on the comment section, I feel like, oh, wow, I entered this as an individual, but I'm coming out as a team with like minded individuals on the comment section, on our audience members who have equally or even better insight and knowledge than I do, and they bring it to the table here when we have a radio show. It's amazing. But that's my thought is instead of a person who has a big voice and a big megaphone saying, everybody come follow me. Here's where I'm going to lead you to. Give me your vote of confidence. There's room for that. Yeah, we need leaders. Leadership is a very important part of a movement. Leadership is a very important part of the movement. But I also believe that everybody has to step up. Um, and this would even be a better model than the collectivist model that Marxist has on the other side. See, so on the other side, they have one dictator and everybody are minions and everybody has to fall in line and obey exactly what they're told so that they will move in unity. On our side, we can actually defeat that, but it's a little bit tricky and a little bit more complex before we can uh, be a part to that kind of unified effort. We can also move in unity. We can, but it's a little bit more complex because what we need in our side, in our community, is for everybody with high intelligence to also be, not only to be teachers and mentors, but also student at the same time. We need to be students at the same time. And every single one of our members in our community who has some sort of level of influence and a level of a loud voice, a megaphone, just like maybe I have a little bit of a loud voice, but we kind of, if we can get our audience to always be joining us on the live shows, then yes, indeed, it would be a big voice. But anybody who has a voice also needs to be, at the same time, needs to be a member of the community with humility and with the ability to learn from others and the ability to integrate himself on his own and her own volition, not being forced to be a part of a collective, but to unify himself with others who has the same goal and who are being led by the same Holy Spirit. And I think we will even be more effective, much more effective than the model that they have on the other side, when one is whipping everybody into submission so that they will move in unity. No, if we are all working together as equals, brothers with equal value, we might have a leader, but the leader doesn't mean the leader have higher value than the members. See, folks, this is what I learned about a few months ago when I was speaking to an influencer in the Philippines who's trying to campaign to have a reform in the Philippines. Basically, there's a movement in the Philippines right now who's trying to reform the government from the presidential model that we have in existence, because our democracy was established by the Americans. So we have the American style of democracy in the Philippines, but there is a big movement right now advocating for, let's follow the Canadian model of a Westminster style parliament system in the Philippines. We're gonna the Philippines will stay as a republic. It doesn't have to give its allegiance to any monarch, but there is a movement advocating for, let's do the parliamentary system where we have members of parliament, and the party who has the biggest numbers of vote, the leader of the party will be the prime minister of the country. The reason they're advocating for that, they believe that it will decentralize power from Metro Manila to the rest of the country, and it will even out, sort of like the antithesis of trying to level it out from a pyramid style leadership. But when I was having this conversation with this guy about 6 months ago, one of the things he opened my mind to the beauty of the parliamentary system that we have here in Canada, the Westminster style parliamentary system, is that if followed to the letter, to the T, the way it was designed, and we're not following it in Canada, according to him, he was saying that if we follow the original intent of how the parliamentary system will work, in a government where there's a prime minister led by the ruling party, or the party who won the majority or even a minority government, but the party who is ruling, and the party leader ends up becoming the prime minister, right? And the prime minister has other ministers in his caucus. By principle, he said that this should be thought of as the prime minister as the first among many equals. So you're called prime because you're the first, but it doesn't mean you're the top. So he was saying to me that when you have a proper implementation of the original intent of a parliamentary system, then you can have situations like what they have in Australia and in the UK, where the prime minister can be kicked out of caucus by the caucus, by the ministers. It's not the other way around, because as a prime minister, you're only the first among many equals. You're not higher. You're not the boss of the caucus. You are leading the caucus. You are first to be sort of like a symbolic head of the caucus. You speak for the caucus. As a prime minister, you are the prime or the first to represent the entire caucus. So in Australia, it happens already a few times where the caucus kicks the leader out and they replace the leader with a new prime minister within the caucus, apart from the general election, right? Because if they're the party that won, they can choose who the prime minister is. When they have a unified voice, they say, okay, the caucus chooses this person to be the leader, and they don't have to wait for a leadership convention. They don't have to wait for a general election. In the middle of his term, if he doesn't behave according to the caucus uh, rule, that he could be kicked out of caucus. And it happened a few times in Australia, and it happened in the UK, and I believe in Spain as well, similar. So this fellow who's telling me about his, and this guy who's talking to me is a polyglot, and he's a very, very intelligent, pretty much a boy genius, who was telling me about the helping me understand the difference between the the presidential system that we have in the Philippines and the parliamentary system that we have here in Canada, and why he believed that the parliamentary system we have in Canada would be appropriate to be the system that we have in the Philippines. And he's explaining to me this about 6 months ago. And I understand now that Justin Trudeau, as soon as he get elected, with what I heard from many of the people I know in the political class, in the political community, Justin Trudeau changed the Liberal Party to his liking. He became the dictator of the Liberal Party. He kicked out many of the classical liberals and the older liberals who has been there in the party for many many years, and he brought in all of his young uh, ministers, because he want to run it the way he wants to run it. And if you listen to the testimony of Richard Roth, my co-host on Wednesdays, he is so woke that he just want to be politically correct. When he got elected in, was it 2016, right? When he got elected in 2016, or his party got elected, he chose his cabinet based on 50% gender virtue signaling, politically correct assembly of his ministers. So it has to be half women, half men, and regardless of merit. So it's not based on merit, it's just based on gender. It's based on virtue signaling. So we have, I don't know how we got down to this conversation, and I will find a way to make our way back. I'm always like this when I don't have a plan. When I do monologues, we kind of go in many different directions. Let's go to the comment section so that my brain can take a little break. David Carlson was saying, in my opinion, the mainstream media is overwhelming us with so much inaccurate and negative information. It's a means to an end. We cannot run away from our problems. If our governments try and restrict our access to essentials, e.g., food, then we will see a mass uprising. Right, I agree. How much political influence does the Catholic Church have in the Philippines? I think quite a lot. Well, I think it's the dominant influence. The Catholic Church until Duterte. So that's the reason a lot of people came around liking Duterte, supporting Duterte, because he is the very first president who kind of defied the Catholic influence on the government. So he kind of truly put a demarcation between the church and the state in the Philippines. But prior to Duterte, everything that the president does is almost like it cannot get any traction unless it has the blessing of the Catholic Church. And I haven't been in the Philippines for over 20 years, so I don't know how it is here there now. But when I left 20 years ago, that was more than 20 years. How many years? I think I've been here 25 years now. I came here in 93, 2003, 2013, 28 years. I've been here 28 years. Um, let's just take a break, folks. I'm running out of breath here, but anybody has any thoughts on what I really want us to talk about is how do we put up a defense? We have an offense, we have an idea, and I think the idea for our offense is we keep on just waking up everybody, we keep on speaking the truth, we keep on pushing back, and we keep on exposing them that they don't have a legal leg to stand on when it comes to vaccine passports. You know, we speak of our human rights. The Human Rights Commission doesn't seem to be very vocal. They should be. This is the time for them to shine, but I don't know. The Ontario Human Rights Commission doesn't seem to be front and center of this. So, but the precepts are still there. Everybody should go to the Human Rights Commission website and know about your human rights. The Privacy Commission also defends um, many of the legislation in Ontario. If you go to the Ontario website and go look at local legislations when it comes to privacy, health privacy, why why the companies where you work for are not allowed to ask you for your vaccination status because that's breaching human rights and breaching your privacy act, the privacy act on behalf of your personal privacy. The answer to the question, have you been vaccinated by any employer? The answer to the question is none of your business. I'm not going to tell you. You guess. Um, so that's the offense. But what about defense? What about even though we have all the legal righteousness and we have all the legal leg, and they can still, because they are schemers and they're evil people, that they can still push their way through amid all the breach of legality, the breach of law, with their tools of fear, with their tools of deception, lying to the people, making people believe one way even though it's not the truth, and making people comply to their campaign, driving them to driving the society to behave in a certain fashion because of their lying. Let's say they kept on advancing their lies and their narrative. We should also simultaneously build a defense or craft a defense plan. What I've been thinking these days is instead of planning to flee the country and go to another country if Canada fall, I don't think we should abandon Canada. If Canada falls, I think we need to find a trench where we can kind of fall back to. I'm hoping we still have a year to plan, but we need some people to kind of seriously get together, sit down, have conversations, and start planning. If Canada falls, what are we gonna do together as a freedom community? My thoughts is we have to fall back. Maybe we have to go to a suburb or a countryside, not too far away from the city, where we can create our own community, our own neighborhood, so that no vaxxers can come in there and force it upon our children. No contact tracers. We can grow our own food. We can do our own microeconomics among ourselves. We like a gated community, and gated community are not uncommon in Canada. Let me read something to everybody here. Oh, we have to take a short break, folks, and when we come back, let's talk about that. Um, but before we go on a break, Howard Kwan is leaving a comment, and he says there's no limit set by the government to stop the experiment jabs, despite the high numbers of report of adverse effects and deaths worldwide. And the thing, Howard, is they're hiding those adverse effects. They're hiding the deaths. No mainstream media will talk about, VAERS, and even as much as VAERS already doesn't report everything, still mainstream media is hiding it by way of not showing it. You know what I'm saying? The sin of omission. Instead of the media putting this front and center of our news every day, no, they're keeping quiet about all the adverse effect and about all the deaths, because that's against their profit. They're all about their profit, and they're all about the end game. So the Great Reset, all of these are moving forward. I'm not saying, even though they're moving forward, I'm still not saying to give up the fight. I'm saying fight to the death, but also have a defense plan. We need to help and reach out to people near our neighborhoods and who will be willing to fall back. If Canada falls, I'm hoping we still have a year to organize. Maybe not. I don't know if this winter is the dark winter that they're calling for. I'm hoping not. There are many things that are hopeful. There are many things that it seems to be the end of the tunnel seems to be lighting up a bit. So I think we have some energy still. We still have some value to push back some more before the full tyranny is rolled out. But having said that, even if you flee and you're only one nuclear family, and you go to a neighborhood that neighborhood is not supportive of civil rights and human rights in Canada, they will snitch on you. So my thoughts are freedom fighters should huddle together, come together, create your own neighborhoods. You know, find maybe a new built homes and buy houses beside each other so that you can look out for one another. When the vaxxers come and they're trying to shield your kids from you, have you heard of shielding, folks? It's a real agenda by the tyrants. They're going to use the virtue signaling buzzword shielding. And Biden has started drumming this up in the United States, where shielding, they said, is when they pull out members of your family to protect them from the unvaccinated members of the family. And they will put them into concentration camps. So if you have kids and they're vaccinated, but you as a parent, you said, I want to exercise my right, or let's say your kids are not vaccinated and you are also not vaccinated, because you want to exercise your right, your civil rights, your human rights, But then they say, oh, your kids are now in danger because you're not vaccinated. So we have to take you away from your kids or take your kids away from you. Shielding is what they call it. And one of you, either your kids go or you go to the concentration camps. They're serious about this, folks. So how do we fight back? Yeah, we can keep fighting back with words, exposing the truth, exposing their lies and speaking the truth. But at some point, if they keep on advancing, I think we need to come together and know where to fall back together. That's just my thoughts. I really need people to be willing to, instead of making plans to go overseas, I think we really need to start thinking about where do we fall back as a community? Where can we create our own community, our own neighborhood? And we'll have make it a gated community maybe. And we'll grow our own food, we'll have our own resources, our own electricity and whatnot. But that's just a general broad brushstroke idea. But I want to start a conversation. So, folks, when we come back, let's talk more about that. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we are going to talk about the defense as well as the offense, how we are going to tackle everything that the tyrant's rolling out against us. You're listening to Freedom Fighter Radio. I'm your host, Joey Salvador. On 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the rest of Canada, except for British Columbia, has come to the afternoon part of the day. But folks, don't go away. We'll be back in a few minutes. This is Freedom Fighter Radio, only here on The Ordinary Joe. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Freedom Fighter Radio, what is up? Whoa! Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio and Joe. You're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right, always.
Make sure you listen to the Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Show.
I'm on Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Joe Show. That's quite a mouthful. Yes. Hey guys, this is Chris Sky. Listen to Freedom Fighter Radio. They're here today, back in the blue, and so am I.
Freedom Fighter Radio, what is up? Whoa! Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio and Joe. You're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right, always.
Make sure you listen to the Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Show.
I'm on Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Joe Show. That's quite a mouthful. Yes. Hey guys, this is Chris Sky. Listen to Freedom Fighter Radio. They're here today, back in the blue, and so am I.
Freedom Fighter Radio, what is up? Whoa! Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio and Joe. You're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right, always.
Make sure you listen to the Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Show.
I'm on Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Joe Show. That's quite a mouthful. Yes. Hey guys, this is Chris Sky. Listen to Freedom Fighter Radio. They're here today, back in the blue, and so am I. Freedom Fighter Radio. What is up? Whoa!
Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio. And Joe, you're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right? Always.
Make sure you listen to the Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Show.
I'm on Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Joe Show. That's quite a mouthful. Yes. Hey guys, this is Chris Guy. Listen to Freedom Fighter Radio. They're here today, back in the blue, and so am I. Freedom Fighter Radio. What is up? Whoa!
Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio. And Joe, you're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right? Always.
Make sure you listen to the Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Show.
I'm on Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Joe Show. That's quite a mouthful. Yes. Hey guys, this is Chris Guy. Listen to Freedom Fighter Radio. They're here today, back in the blue, and so am I. Freedom Fighter Radio. What is up? Whoa!
Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio. And Joe, you're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right? Always.
Make sure you listen to the Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Show.
I'm on Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Joe Show. That's quite a mouthful. Yes. Hey guys, this is Chris Guy. Listen to Freedom Fighter Radio. They're here today, back in the blue, and so am I. Freedom Fighter Radio. What is up? Whoa!
Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio. And Joe, you're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right? Always.
Make sure you listen to the Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Show.
I'm on Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Joe Show. That's quite a mouthful. Yes. Hey guys, this is Chris Guy. Listen to Freedom Fighter Radio. They're here today, back in the blue, and so am I. Freedom Fighter Radio. What is up? Whoa!
Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio. And Joe, you're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right? Always.
Make sure you listen to the Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Show.
I'm on Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Joe Show. That's quite a mouthful. Yes. Hey guys, this is Chris Guy. Listen to Freedom Fighter Radio. They're here today, back in the blue, and so am I.
Welcome back. Welcome back. This is your host, Joey Salvador. You're listening to Freedom Fighter Radio only here on The Ordinary Joe. I can see we are maintaining our listenership on our brand new ability to go live on our radio app. Freedom Fighter Radio app as hosted for us from Zeno.fm. And I can see the heat map right now, which I'm going to screen share, or not screen share, but I will uh, copy and paste on our main page. And this will be the last segment of our live show, folks, and then it will go default to our regular programming. When we end this show, we are going to be disconnected from Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube, but our Zeno.fm Freedom Fighter Radio app will continue playing. And before the live show, we were listening to what's his name again? David Skousen, and also so basically these are some end time prophecies. But what I like about these two fellow, the other guy, what's his name again? These two fellow are like going deeper on the actual geopolitics, history. It's not all just based in scripture. Like it's not just stroking the feelings of Christians. They come down to history. They come down to political analysis. What's this guy's name again? I just listened to him last night. His last name is Skousen, and the other one is Quail. It's very educational, folks. I would encourage you to listen to this two downloads, audio downloads I am playing for everybody about some of their analysis, some of what they think is going to happen, and many of what they already predicted in the past has come true based on because one of them is an Air Force veteran in the military. So he talks about a lot of military insights on how he's reading the current times, and he's basing from his prediction on how he reads the signs of the times from a military perspective. And the other one is a sort of a preacher, although not a preacher, sort of like a prophet, but he wrote a couple of books. His last name is Quail, and he's respected even among the secular historians circles, analysts, because he gives a lot of accurate sort of prediction, accurate in the sense that these are some of the things that could happen given this scenario. um if it's very hard for me to describe, but I can see that we are maintaining good listening ship. We have very little in Canada, but 11 people are listening from the mainland United States. We have listeners in Hawaii, 11 listeners in Hawaii. Wow. We have 8 listeners in Ireland. I like this radio app because it gives us sort of like a heat map where people are listening from, and I really appreciate that. So I would encourage those who are listening to us on Facebook right now on live, and also when we go off live, and then I post this on our main page. As soon as we go off live, I will download and post this on our main page, and this will be available also shareable on Rumble right after. This sometimes we get more traction after we go off live than when we are live, but it's case to case basis, folks. So this is the last segment for today's show, and we are going to see you again tomorrow morning. And it might not be morning in Ontario; it might be already afternoon in Ontario, but still be morning in more than half of Canada tomorrow. As long it's still 11 o'clock in 11 a.m. in Western Canada, in Saskatchewan and Alberta, we are still gonna call it Good Morning Show. And I really want to have a deeper conversation. And some of you will be listening to this on the post, not on the live. But I really want us to have a deeper conversation on having um, exchange of thoughts on falling back if if the city centers fall, if Canada fall in the hands of tyrants. What are we gonna do, guys? Let's have a conversation at least. It might not be easy to have an actual concrete conversation on actual planning, but let's start having conversation because I think the Holy Spirit will guide us towards the right direction if we just get it started. If we just get the conversation started, how are we going to have a defense plan? I think we also need to consider falling back in case we don't win the frontal assault against the lies and the deception of the tyrants and the media. If we don't win on our offensive frontal assault, we need to have a plan on a fallback. How can we preserve our children? How we can preserve our lives, our families, our possessions? Where are we going to go? How are we going to huddle? And how are we going to defend each other, protect each other from the tyrants? I just want to invite all of our listeners to start a conversation because I think idea will start flourishing from every single one of us. And when we have a very good idea, I think that could be a launching pod for actual mini plans. We don't have to have like a unified plan for all of Ontario or for all of, but every single person who wants to participate can start their own plan in their own communities. um, I am very hopeful that our ability to go live now on our radio app would help us reach more and more. But for all our radio app listeners right now, please also join us on our main page on Facebook because we have other information on Facebook as well, such as joining our mailing list, um, how to join our mailing list, how to join our Patreon to support our endeavors. We have other things. How to subscribe on our Rumble are all on our main page, which is Freedom Fighter Radio Canada. So all our radio app listeners, please go to Facebook, look for Freedom Fighter Radio Canada. Please subscribe and please share the link to your friends or invite friends. So as soon as you subscribe, as soon as you follow the page, there's an invite button on the page where you can invite your friends so that more people will join us. And although we cannot go live on that particular page, it's still very helpful for our cause because when people go to our page, we can um, ask people to join our mailing list, receive the newsletter, and many more stuff so that we can stay connected, we can be cohesive. And some of you, I think, should start stepping up and maybe be co-host on some of the shows. Monologue is something I enjoy for like half an hour, to be honest. And then beyond half an hour, I still enjoy the thoughts, the conversation, but my windpipe is not enjoying it as much anymore. Let's go to our comments section. Oh, we got no new comments, but folks, I'm really counting on our off live listeners. If you're listening to this and we're not live anymore, you're just listening to this on your post. Please continue and helping us out, even though this is not live anymore. You can still share this because we're gonna post this on our main page. Please share this episode to all your friends. And folks, when I get carried away, I don't talk about our how to support this our production. Freedom Fighter Radio is a volunteer organization, and we don't have any sort of big donors, big sponsors. We don't have, what do you call that, when people get some money from the government as a grant. We don't have grants, nothing like that. I'd really want us to build this together and as a grassroots movement, to be an alternative to mainstream media. Please help us out financially as well. For some of you who cannot help us financially, please help us with beating the algorithm by sharing, getting this link, sharing it to many more subscribers and listeners to the show. We are starting to get volunteer broadcasters here. So, coming soon to the show, we already have launched Lawyers for Truth. Is already and we already have a few episodes that we are going to roll out soon. We're waiting to have our live ability to go broadcast live on our main page to be restored. And we got a lot of pre-produced materials on the pipeline. As soon as our restriction is lifted, I'm going to introduce as well to the community a new broadcaster from British Columbia, a young freedom fighter, and we are having conversations right now how she can start producing for the show, hosting her own show. Tiana Lupik, one of the freedom fighting leaders in British Columbia, will also be contributing. And I really want to see some of our valuable members of the audience members who's always giving us great insights here on the show. Maybe, guys, maybe it's time for you guys to step up. Join me on the studio. Have conversations instead of just having conversations on the comment section. Let's have conversations vocally. And so, starting tomorrow, I have a few things that I want us to discuss. Um, there's a 2004 research here about Canadian gated communities and the impact on their neighbors, and how can we put this together. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. One of the things I want to talk about tomorrow, have you heard of a concept of cow share? You know what's a cow share? So when you buy a kilo of beef in the grocery, you pay for it on certain, I don't know, what's a kilo of beef now? I'm pretty sure it's pretty pricey, especially if it's the prime cut for your steak, right? I don't do the groceries, but let's say, so people will know that I don't have a clue. But let's say a prime cut, a pound of prime filet mignon. I don't know, maybe it's $30 for a kilo or a pound. Let's say it's $30. With a cow share, you can slash that by 70% cost. It's like a cooperative farming kind of arrangement. And tomorrow, I want like us also, if we have an opportunity, I would like to discuss about spying on family and friends. This is from the Holocaust and human behavior, facing histories ourselves. This is from the Holocaust and human behavior, conformity and consent website. I want to touch on this a little bit tomorrow. And again, we are going to start crawling back to our series on biodigital convergence. And one of the things I want to talk about is Mark Zuckerberg's bid to dominate the metaverse. And metaverse, according to uh, Facebook CEO, the metaverse will be the social network of the future, and it will replace not only social media. The metaverse will replace the internet. And I really think the metaverse is also the platform where 5G and biodigital convergence will be the environment for it. But folks, thank you for tuning in today. I really enjoy every morning when we come together. Well, morning for the rest of Canada, but not. It's afternoon in Ontario. But I will have another non-video radio show tonight for 6 p.m. Freedom Fighter Radio evening, Monday evening. Um, our Awaken to Freedom is sort of on a hiatus because our fellow producer for that show seems to be quite busy these days, but that's fine. We are going to continue. We are going to have a radio show tonight at 6 p.m., 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be like this. It's audio only. There won't be, I'm trying to get, I think I might have a guest for tonight. Um, and you know what? Let me talk to our audience members who are regular. Please keep an eye out for our Freedom Fighter Radio Canada web page, Facebook page, as we post the offline or when we sign off. When we sign off from Facebook and Rumble and YouTube, folks, this will be available. The video file will be available. I'll be posting it on Freedom Fighter Radio Canada Facebook page, the one with the 15,000 followers. And please get the link from there and share it around. So we are going to sign off for now, and we'll see you at 6 p.m. And we got a lot of things to talk about, and some of this that I mentioned that I want to talk about tomorrow. I'm going to start touching on some of this tonight, 6 p.m. But also, I pray that it wouldn't be a monologue. I really wish that maybe I'm going to invite Howard Kwan and David Carlson to step up and join me via phone call and join me on the show tonight. Hey, David and Howard, if you're still around and you're listening to the live cast, I'd like to invite you both. Come and join me in the studio, folks, because you have very, very valuable insights on things, and I think people would love to hear more from you. But that's for me, folks, for this morning, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning for the regular radio program. But for Mondays, usually we have a podcast at 6 p.m. But for tonight, we are going to have a Monday radio night show. We'll see you again tonight. And for our radio app listeners, don't go away. We sign off from Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook, but we are going to continue on our show from where we left off with Joel Skousen. Actually, I'm going to start that to kind of tease some of our YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook listeners. And guys, these are some of the things you will be hearing if you download the app and listen on Freedom Fighter Radio app. So we're going to play the first part of that for you, and we are going to say goodbye to our Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble audiences. And we're going to continue with our Freedom Fighter Radio app listeners. Continue on. All right, folks. So we'll see you again tomorrow. God bless you. And some of you on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, we'll see you again tonight.
World Affairs Brief. It's a weekly news analysis service that concentrates on helping you understand
Folks, this is Joel Skousen
is in domestic and foreign policy in the United States. The government will, of course, claim that they're doing everything in the interest of the nation, in the interest of the taxpayer, but they're not. Ever since, I think Ronald Reagan was the last president we had that was not a controlled puppet. Eisenhower was, Kennedy was, Nixon was, Ford was, and of course George W. Bush was, and Barack Obama. A lot of you who have been exposed to the conservative, the quote, mainstream conservative network like Fox News we get a lot of information about Barack Obama, negative information. And one of the most prominent concepts is that he's a Marxist and he's a Muslim. It's not true. He used to be a Marxist. He never was a Muslim and never was a Christian. Simply gone to those various religions and when it suits political purposes. He's an a-religious person, has no religious beliefs whatsoever. And he sold out long ago to the globalists. And that's why Barack Obama is a puppet to them. He's got more skeletons in his closet than to compare it with, but he's got a lot. Barack Obama's a homosexual. It's a sham marriage he has. Barack Obama is an illegal alien. In fact, his father, Obama probably wasn't his father. It was probably a sham marriage as well to cover up for his real father, Mr. Marshall, a Marxist activist. And his mother was having a pornographic relationship with Marshall in his home in Hawaii. And they got together, Hussein Obama, to marry her to cover up for the pregnancy that was. And if you look at the pictures between of Mr. Marshall and Obama, you see a very distinct relationship that you don't see it with his father from Kenya. But nevertheless, he holds, he has an illegal alien status. He holds a false Social Security card, which was provided to him by the government. And so they got a lot to twist his arm with. He worked for the CIA while he was at Occidental University, and that's why no one knew him there. He did have a roommate who occasionally saw him when he wasn't out of the country doing special assignments for the CIA. So once you go down that road, you know, like Hillary Clinton, they make you wealthy. How is it that a person like Barack Obama, who has never earned more than $60,000 a year as a community organizer, is worth over $20 million today? You know, it's the $100,000 stock deals that Hillary Clinton got when she was part of the Rose Law Firm. This is the way that they handle insiders, not Marxists. They handle people who convert and come over to globalism and do their bidding. So America will not be solved by getting rid of Barack Obama. I'm here to tell you that the establishment has been trying to give you a controlled Republican as the next president to undo the fervor that you have against Obama and against the Democratic administration. They know that you'll go down and go to sleep if they give you a Republican like George W. Bush. But unfortunately, and this is one of the 4 or 5 areas in which the globalists are meeting tremendous resistance today. They've had a free ride all the way up through George W. Bush. The globalists have met severe resistance in 5 major areas. Politics, which I'll talk about first. The EU and their globalist free trade agreements, tremendous amount of resistance. Immigration, tremendous amount of resistance. Gun control, tremendous amount of resistance. Despite all of their efforts to manipulate things like what just happened in California. And I'll cover the manipulative evidence that'll show you that this was a government operation, as have been almost all of the mass shootings that we have to deal with today. But let's first talk about politics. I predicted in the World Affairs Brief long ago that they would not really want Hillary Clinton to be president. I mean, she looks like a slam dunk, but she's not. Hillary Clinton has a very difficult time being popular even with the Democrats. And that's why Bernie Sanders is so, you know, the hardcore Democrats really want a hardcore socialist. Hillary Clinton is, you know, a globalist puppet. And so she'll bend with the waves. And so she doesn't really have a good, strong reputation even with the hardcore Democrats. But the powers that be know that Hillary Clinton will actually try to run the White House if she gets in. She is a real dominant woman. And she's got a lot of skeletons in her closets as well. But they really want a compliant puppet. They'd just as soon have Barack Obama watching his sports shows on television until they call him to read his script. And that's why he needs a teleprompter so often. They're planning in the political realm. Let's talk a little bit about free trade agreements and the EU. There's a massive backlash in the EU against big government control. UK Independent Party in Britain is winning elections. They've won over 40% of the delegates to the EU Parliament. The French party of Marine Le Pen, the National Front, has won the majority of delegates to the European Parliament. So you see, the globalists are really worried. There's a backlash against this, and that backlash has increased with this immigration problem. See, part of the globalist purposes in creating all of this mess in Syria was to create a flow of refugees that would flood Europe and water down the culture and make sure that Europe is never again like it was before, a predominantly white Christian nation.